The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, and with it the beginning of the end. Sarah Mitchell stared at her laptop screen in the corner booth of Lou's Diner, watching the cursor blink in her empty document. The blank page mocked her. Another assignment, another story about struggling small towns in America's heartland, and she had nothing. No angle, no hook. Just the same tired narrative she'd been writing for 3 years. Across from her, cooling coffee sat forgotten next to a half-eaten omelette. She'd ordered scrambled eggs with cheese, whole wheat toast and hash browns, comfort food she barely tasted. The breakfast crowd had thinned out. Just a few regulars reading newspapers. The soft clink of silverware on plates. The hiss of the grill where Lou was cooking bacon for the lunch prep. Normal, safe, real. She should have appreciated it more. Sarah was 32 years old and still living in a studio apartment in Pilsen, still taking freelance assignments that barely covered rent, still telling herself that real journalism, the kind that mattered, was just one story away. She'd graduated from Northwestern with a degree in journalism and dreams of investigative reporting, had imagined herself uncovering corruption, exposing injustice, writing pieces that changed things. Instead, she wrote human interest stories about dying towns for a mid-tier online magazine. The thought made her throat tight. She took a sip of lukewarm coffee to push it down. Her phone buzzed against the Formica table, making her jump. A text from Marcus, her editor at Heartland Voices, the online magazine that paid her bills and occasionally her rent. Check your email. Got something weird for you, right up your alley. Marcus had been her editor for 2 years. He was good at his job, knew how to spot a story, knew what would get clicks, knew how to push his writers without breaking them. But he'd never described an assignment as weird before. Sarah frowned and switched windows. The email was short, written in Marcus's characteristic terse style. Sarah, remember that piece you pitched about dying American towns? Found something better. Ashford, Nebraska. Pop 1047 as of the 2010 census. Current population, unknown, possibly 0. Town went silent about 5 years ago. No official explanation. County claims economic migration. But here's the thing, nobody left. No forwarding addresses, no U-Hauls, no trail. They just stopped. Last known contact was a 911 call in November 2019. Attached transcript. Since then, nothing. County Sheriff's Office did one welfare check. Found the place abandoned. State declined to investigate further. Called it a resource allocation issue. I know it sounds like creepypasta bullshit, but I verified everything. This town exists. It's still on maps, and nobody wants to talk about it. Another journalist went there in 2019, Rebecca Chen from the Tribune. Never came back, never filed her story. Tribune said she resigned, but her family filed a missing persons report. That got closed too. Budget approved for a week. Go see what's there, or what's not there. This could be big, Sarah. The kind of story people remember. Marcus. Sarah read it twice, her pulse quickening. This was different. This wasn't another piece about a town slowly dying as young people moved to cities. This was, what? A mystery? A tragedy? Something worse? Attached was a scanned document, faded and stamped Official Record Emergency Services. Call transcript date November 3rd, 2019. 11:47 p.m. Caller redacted location Ashford. TAR 68710 dispatcher, 911, what's your emergency? Caller male, elderly, they're in the church. All of them, dispatcher, sir. Who is in the church? Are you in danger? Caller, everyone. The whole town. They went inside and they won't come out. Dispatcher. Sir, I need you to stay calm. What church are you? Caller, St. Catherine's on Maple Street. They've been in there for 3 days. Out and I can hear them singing. Dispatcher. You can hear singing. Are they trapped inside? Caller, no, they went willingly. Voice becomes whisper. They're waiting for something. Pastor Whitmore said. He said the silence would come first, before the awakening. I didn't believe him. God forgive me, I didn't believe him. Dispatcher. Sir, I'm sending units to your location. What is your name? Caller, increasingly distressed. You don't understand. The fog is not natural. It's been getting thicker every day. You can't see more than 10 feet now. And the sound. When the wind stops, you can hear it underneath everything. Like breathing, like the whole town is breathing. Dispatcher, sir, stay on the line. Help is coming. Caller, don't send anyone. Please don't let anyone come here. Oh God, oh Jesus, the doors are opening, dispatchers are. Sir, are you there? Sound of phone dropping. Rustling. Distant sound that might be singing or wind connection maintained for 4 minutes 33 seconds. No further speech. Call ended follow-up. County Sheriff's Office conducted welfare check on November 6, 2019. Town found abandoned. No signs of struggle. All vehicles present. Personal effects in homes. No residents located. Case filed as mass migration event. Investigation closed due to lack of evidence of criminal activity. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she set down her phone. The diner suddenly felt too loud, too bright. She read the transcript again, more slowly this time. The whole town is breathing. What did that mean? Mass hysteria, a cult, some kind of environmental disaster that drove everyone away. But the follow-up report said no signs of struggle. All vehicles present. People didn't just abandon their cars and walk away into the night. That didn't happen. Not in real life, except it had. Apparently. She opened a new browser tab and searched for Ashford, Nebraska. The results were sparse and unsettling in their brevity. A Wikipedia stub that hadn't been updated since 2015, containing only basic information. Founded 1883 agricultural community, population 1847. A few mentions in regional history books about farming communities in the Great Plains. One article from the Omaha World Herald, dated December 2019. Rural Nebraska town left empty. Experts cite economic pressures. Sarah clicked on the article. It was 3 paragraphs long and said almost nothing. Ashford. The small farming community of Ashford appears to have been completely abandoned, according to county officials who conducted a welfare check last month. The town, which had a population of approximately 1,800 residents, now stands empty. This is consistent with broader trends we're seeing in rural America, said Dr. Patricia Holbrook, a sociologist at the University of Nebraska. When economic opportunities disappear, people leave, sometimes quickly. County officials say the town will remain accessible, but will not be providing ongoing services. No foul play is suspected. That was it. No interviews with former residents. No quotes from family members. No speculation about where nearly 2,000 people might have gone. Just a bland dismissal wrapped in academic language. Something about the article felt wrong. Felt managed. Sarah switched to Google Maps and entered the address. Her breath caught. There it was. Ashford, Nebraska. A grid of streets in the middle of farmland, about 40 miles from the nearest highway. The satellite view was outdated. 2017, she zoomed in on St. Catherine's Church. Even from the satellite view, it looked old. Gothic revival architecture that seemed out of place in the prairie flatland. The image was grainy, but she could see something odd about the building. The shadows around it seemed darker than they should be, even accounting for the late afternoon sun when the photo was taken. Like the church was surrounded by a pool of darkness that the satellite couldn't quite capture. Sarah told herself it was just image compression. Just pixels. Nothing more, but her hands were still shaking. Her phone rang, making her jump again. Marcus! You get my email? He asked without preamble. Marcus never bothered with pleasantries. Yeah, Marcus, Are you sure this is real? Almost 2,000 people don't just vanish. Verified it myself. Called the county clerk's office. Called the sheriff's department. Called the State Department of Economic Development. Everyone confirmed the town is empty, but nobody wants to talk about it. The clerk got defensive, said it was handled, and hung up on me. Sheriff's office said the case was closed and suggested I stop asking questions. That's when I knew there was something there. Marcus paused, and Sarah could hear him taking a drag on his cigarette. He was supposed to have quit. Someone's sitting on this story. And I want to know why. What about relatives? Friends? People must have connections outside the town. Someone must be looking for them. Some. I found a few leads, family members who filed missing persons reports. Those got closed too, marked as voluntarily missing adults. After a while, people stopped asking questions. Or they were told to stop asking. Marcus's voice dropped. And then there's Rebecca Chen, the Tribune reporter. Yeah, she went to Ashford in early November 2019. Sent her editor a couple of check-ins, said she was onto something big. Then radio silence. Tribune tried to reach her for 3 days. Finally contacted local authorities, who did a search. Found her car in town, doors unlocked, keys in the ignition. All her equipment was there. Everything except Rebecca. Sarah's stomach turned. What did the Tribune do? Officially accepted her resignation. Unofficially? They scared. Someone high up made it clear they weren't to pursue it. Rebecca's family pushed for an investigation, but it went nowhere. After 6 months, she was declared voluntarily missing. Case closed. That's insane. That's why I'm sending you. Marcus took another drag. Look, I wouldn't send you if I thought it was dangerous. It's probably some mass cult thing. Everyone moved to a compound in Montana or something. But the story's there. I can feel it. And Sarah. This is the one. The story that gets you noticed. The story that opens doors. Sarah stared at the satellite image of Ashford. The church. The empty streets. The shadows that were too dark. You can feel it, she repeated flatly. Don't give me that skeptical journalist tone. You feel it too. That's why you're going. He was right. Damn him, he was right. Despite the fear coiling in her stomach, despite the voice in her head screaming that this was wrong, she wanted to go. Needed to go. This was exactly the kind of story she'd been waiting for. The kind that mattered. The kind that people remembered. One week, she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. I drive up, look around, document what I find. If there's nothing there, I'm not manufacturing mystery. And I check in every day. Miss a check-in, you call the authorities. Fair, but Sarah. He was quiet for a moment. Be careful. I don't know. This one feels different. Take pepper spray. Keep your phone charged. And if anything feels wrong, really wrong, you leave. Story's not worth your life. You're not usually the protective type. Yeah, well. He cleared his throat. Maybe I'm getting old. Just be careful. After they hung up, Sarah sat in the booth for another 20 minutes, staring at the satellite image of Ashford. The shadows around the church, the empty streets, the water tower with its faded name. She thought about the 911 call. The whole town is breathing. She thought about Rebecca Chen, a journalist like her, someone looking for a story, someone who never came back. She thought about her studio apartment with its leaking faucet and view of a brick wall, about her student loans and her sister's wedding next month, and her mother's gentle, constant disappointment that she wasn't using her degree to work at a real newspaper. She thought about how badly she wanted a story that mattered. Every instinct told her to say no. To email Marcus back and tell him to find someone else. To stay in Chicago where it was safe and real and normal. Instead, Sarah Mitchell closed her laptop, paid her bill, left a generous tip for the waitress who'd kept her coffee warm, and went home to pack. The drive from Chicago to Ashford took 9 hours, most of it on straight highways, cutting through October farmland. Sarah left before dawn on Thursday, her 15-year-old Honda Civic packed with supplies that made the trip feel more like an expedition than a reporting assignment. She'd spent Wednesday preparing. Printed out maps. Cell service would be spotty at best, non-existent at worst. Downloaded offline GPS coordinates. Plotted her route with backup roads in case of detours. Packed more supplies than necessary. A week's worth of water bottles, protein bars, granola, instant coffee, a first aid kit that included antibiotics and pain medication, 3 flashlights with extra batteries, a portable phone charger, and, after a moment's hesitation and a memory of Marcus's warning, a can of pepper spray that she tucked into her glove compartment. She'd also done more research. Dug deeper into Ashford's history, found old census records, historical society documents, archived newspapers. The town had been unremarkable for most of its existence. A farming community that prospered in the early 20th century, struggled through the Depression, stabilized after World War II, and slowly declined as younger generations moved to cities. By 2010, the population had dropped from a peak of 3,200 in 1950 to less than 1,900. Normal, predictable, the same story as 1,000 other rural towns, except for the gaps. References to events that weren't explained, allusions to tragedies without details, a church fire in 1934, a mass relocation in 1967, an incident in 1998 involving the town doctor. Sarah had tried to find more information, but the details were frustratingly absent. It was as if someone had gone through the historical record and carefully edited out anything interesting. Now, as the sun rose over Illinois and set over Nebraska, she had 9 hours to think about what she was driving toward. 9 hours to question her decision. 9 hours to imagine turning around. The landscape grew emptier with each passing mile. Cities became suburbs, became small towns, became villages, became lonely clusters of houses, huddled against the vast sky. Sarah had grown up in the suburbs of Detroit, gone to college in Chicago. She was used to density, to the constant presence of other people. This emptiness felt unnatural, oppressive. As the afternoon wore on, civilization thinned to nearly nothing. Gas stations grew farther apart. The radio stations faded to static, then religious programming, then static again. Sarah cycled through AM and FM, looking for anything to fill the silence. Finally settled on a country station that kept cutting in and out, playing songs about lost love and small-town bars. By the time she turned onto County Road 47, the final approach to Ashford according to her GPS, the sun was touching the horizon, painting the sky in shades of rust and gold. The road was poorly maintained, cracked asphalt with weeds growing through the seams. No tire tracks that she could see. No signs of recent travel. Sarah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The last town she'd passed through, a place called Meridian with maybe 300 people, was 15 miles back. The gas station attendant there, a kid who couldn't have been older than 19, had given her a strange look when she asked about Ashford. "Why would you want to go there?" He'd asked. "I'm a journalist, writing a story about rural population decline." The kid had shaken his head. "Nobody goes to Ashford. Place is dead. That's what I'm investigating. No, I mean..." He'd paused, seeming to weigh his words. "My uncle was the sheriff's deputy who went there to check on everyone. After the calls stopped, he said the place was wrong. Said it felt like a grave. He transferred to a different county right after. Wrong how? But the kid had just shaken his head again and taken her money without another word. Now, driving down County Road 47, Sarah understood what he meant. 5 miles to Ashford, according to her GPS. The cornfields on either side of the road were overgrown, unharvested stalks bent and broken, brown and dead. Sarah slowed her car, unease prickling at the back of her neck. November in Nebraska. The field should have been cleared months ago. Farmers didn't leave corn unharvested. Couldn't afford to, unless there were no farmers left to harvest it. 3 miles. A sign appeared, tilted at a 15-degree angle and weathered by years of exposure. Ashford, founded 1883, population 1,247. Someone had spray-painted over the population number, in dripping red letters that could have been paint or could have been something else. Empty, Sarah stopped the car in the middle of the road. Her hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, the road ahead vanished into what looked like fog, a thick grey-white bank that sat across the highway like a wall, like a barrier, like a warning. She checked her phone, no signal. She'd expected that. What she hadn't expected was the temperature drop. When she'd stopped for gas in Meridian, it had been a mild 58 degrees, pleasant for later. October. Now, according to her car's dashboard, it was 42 and falling. She watched the number tick down as she sat there. 41, 40, 39. The fog hadn't been in the weather forecast. She'd checked that morning. Clear skies, mild temperatures, light wind. But the forecast had been for the region. Maybe Ashford had its own microclimate. Maybe there was a river or lake nearby creating unusual conditions. Maybe. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She could turn around, drive back to Meridian, get a hotel room, call Marcus, and tell him she'd changed her mind. No story was worth this crawling sense of dread. This certainty that something was very, very wrong, but she'd come this far. And despite the fear, or maybe because of it, she needed to see, needed to know. Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself, put the car in drive and eased forward. The fog swallowed her instantly. It was like driving into a cave, into a void. Visibility dropped to barely 10 feet. Her headlights reflected back at her, useless, turning the fog into a glowing wall of white. Sarah slowed to a crawl, hands tight on the wheel, following the faded center line more by faith than sight. The temperature continued to drop. 38 degrees, 35, 34. Her breath fogged the air inside the car. Sarah fumbled with the air conditioning, switching it to heat. The warm air helped, but she could still see her breath. In October, in Nebraska, this wasn't natural. And then there was something else. A smell that seeped into the car despite the closed windows and recirculating air. Faint at first, then growing stronger. Sweet and rotten at once, like flowers left too long in a vase. Like fruit gone bad. Like decay dressed up as something pleasant. Sarah gagged and fumbled with the air conditioning again, trying to block it out. It helped, but she could still taste it. In the back of her throat, on her tongue, decay and old perfume and something else she couldn't identify. How long she drove through that fog she couldn't say. It felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Time seemed to stretch and compress in the white nothing. Her sense of direction disappeared. For all she knew, she was driving in circles, lost in the fog forever, slowly running out of gas, freezing to death in her car, while that smell grew stronger and stronger. Then, without warning, she was through. The fog ended as abruptly as it began, and Ashford lay before her. Sarah hit the brakes hard, the car jerking to a stop in the middle of the road. She stared through the windshield, trying to process what she was seeing. The town was there. Actually there. Not burned out or bulldozed or blown away by tornadoes. Just empty, preserved, waiting. Main Street stretched ahead, lined with brick buildings from another era. A hardware store with a faded open sign still hanging in the window. A drugstore with an old-fashioned awning and a display of products visible through the dusty glass. A diner with Rosie's in faded red letters on the window, its interior dark but intact. A bank, a small grocery store. A post office with an American flag hanging limp on its pole, all intact, all dark, all abandoned. Cars sat parked along the street, tires flat, covered in dust and pollen and bird droppings. An old pickup truck. A minivan. A sedan that looked like it dated from the early 2000s. Streetlights stood at regular intervals, some with their glass broken, most simply dark. The sidewalks were cracked but not destroyed. Weeds pushed up through the concrete, but nothing was overgrown. It looked like everyone had simply stopped what they were doing and walked away. No, not walked. Vanished, mid-moment, mid-life, mid-sentence, a ghost town. But not the kind Sarah had seen before. Abandoned western mining towns where buildings collapsed and nature reclaimed the land. This was different. This was a snapshot, a moment frozen in time. Sarah pulled to the curb in front of what looked like it had been a coffee shop, the Daily Grind, according to the sign. She turned off the engine and sat in the sudden silence. Silence. That was the word that kept coming back. Not quiet. Quiet implied an absence of sound. This was different. This was a presence, a weight. Like the air itself had stopped moving. Like sound had been drained from the world. She checked her phone again. Still no signal. And the time, she frowned. Her phone said 6:47 p.m., but her car's clock said 7:23 p.m. Her watch, when she checked it, agreed with the car. 7:23 p.m. Her phone's clock must have glitched. Must have frozen when she lost signal. Sarah took a breath, steadying herself. She was a journalist. This was a story. She'd documented abandoned places before. This was just another assignment. Just another empty town with a sad explanation waiting to be uncovered. She almost believed it. She grabbed her backpack with her recording equipment, voice recorder, camera, notebook, pens, checked that her pepper spray was in her jacket pocket, and opened the car door. The smell hit her immediately. That same sickly sweet rot, stronger now. She gagged and pulled her jacket over her nose. After a moment, she adjusted. The smell didn't fade, but she could breathe through it. Humans could adjust to anything given time. The temperature was even colder here. Maybe 30 degrees. Her breath came out in thick clouds. In October. In Nebraska. This wasn't possible. But it was happening. Sarah pulled out her voice recorder and pressed record. This is Sarah Mitchell. October 28th. She checked her watch again, frowning at the way the second hand seemed to stutter, catching on each tick before moving forward. Approximately 7:25 p.m. I'm in Ashford, Nebraska. Downtown area, Main Street. The town appears abandoned but intact. Visibility is clear here, though I drove through heavy fog to reach this location. Temperature is unseasonably cold, estimated 30 degrees. There's a distinctive smell in the air. Decay, possibly biological. No signs of life, no sounds. No movement. She turned in a slow circle, recording the scene. The empty street. The dark buildings. The cars with their flat tires. The way the light seemed wrong, dimmer than it should be even as sunset approached. "I'm going to investigate the nearest building," she continued, her voice steadier than she felt. "The Daily Grind coffee shop. Looking for any indication of what happened here. Any clue about where the residents went?" The coffee shop door was unlocked. It swung open with a creak that made Sarah's teeth ache, the sound impossibly loud in the silence. Inside it was darker, the late afternoon light barely penetrating the dirty windows. She pulled out her flashlight and swept the beam across the interior. Tables and chairs sat in ordinary arrangements, cups still on some tables, empty or showing rings of long-dried liquid. Coffee cups, it looked like, as if people had been sitting here, drinking coffee, talking, living their lives, and then simply stopped. A newspaper lay on the counter, dated November 2nd, 2019. The headline, "Harvest Season Ends. Farmers report unusual crop die-off." Sarah photographed it, noted the date. The day before the 911 call. Behind the counter, the cash register drawer hung open, money still inside. 5s and 10s and 20s, maybe $200 total. She swept her light across the floor, scattered coins as if someone had dropped their change and left it. Who abandons money? She moved deeper into the shop. There was a kitchen visible through a doorway. Industrial coffee makers sat cold and empty. A refrigerator hummed. Sarah froze. The refrigerator was humming. She spun toward it, flashlight beam jerking across the walls. The refrigerator was running, which meant there was power, but when she flipped the light switch by the door, nothing. Tried another switch. Nothing. The refrigerator was running, but the lights were dead. Sarah recorded this observation, her voice shakier than she wanted. She opened the fridge carefully, not sure what she expected to find. It was mostly empty. A carton of milk, swollen and ruptured, its contents long since spoiled. Several bottles of water, some wrapped sandwiches green with mold. The freezer held only ice, long since melted and refrozen into strange, lumpy shapes. She closed the refrigerator and stood there listening. The hum of the motor. That was the only sound, no birds, no wind. No distant traffic, just that hum, and underneath it, Sarah held her breath, straining to hear. Underneath the hum there was something else, so faint she might have been imagining it. A whisper, or many whispers, like static on an old radio but organic, alive, like breathing. She shook her head, dismissing it as imagination. The power of suggestion after reading all that creepy material Marcus had sent. Rebecca Chen's recording. The 911 call. Her mind was primed to hear things that weren't there. But as she left the coffee shop and stood again on Main Street, the sound followed her. Or maybe it had always been there, and she was only now noticing it. A susurrus. A breathing. The whole town is breathing. Sarah pulled her jacket tighter against the cold and started walking down Main Street, recording observations, taking photographs, trying to maintain professional distance, even as unease coiled tighter in her stomach. The sun was setting now, the light fading fast. Long shadows stretched across the street. Sarah quickened her pace, wanting to get a sense of the town before darkness fell completely. She passed more shops, a barber with old-fashioned chairs still visible through the window, a clothing store with mannequins frozen in decades-old fashion, a pharmacy with a prescriptions-filled sign and racks of medicine visible behind the counter, all intact. All abandoned, all waiting. At the end of Main Street, she could see residential neighborhoods branching off, streets with names like Maple and Oak and Pine. And beyond those, rising above the rooflines, the tall spire of St. Catherine's Church. The church, where the 911 caller said everyone had gathered, where they'd been singing. Sarah stared at that spire silhouetted against the darkening sky. She should go there. Should investigate. That's where the answers would be. But something in her rebelled. Some instinct that said once she entered that church, everything would change. There would be no going back. The light was fading fast now. She needed to make a decision. Set up camp for the night or push forward and investigate the church while she still had some daylight. Sarah looked at her watch. 3 p.m. She'd lost track of time. How long had she been exploring Main Street? It had felt like 20 minutes, but over half an hour had passed. The cold was deepening. Her fingers were numb despite her gloves, and the fog was returning, creeping in at the edges of town like a living thing. Decision made. She'd spend the night in a secure location, rest, prepare, investigate the church in the morning when she was fresh and had full daylight. But where to sleep? Her car felt exposed, and something told her she shouldn't go back outside the town limits. The fog might not let her. And the houses, God, the houses felt wrong. Too intimate. Too much like entering tombs. Then she saw it. A 2-story brick building with Ashford Public Library, Esther 1889, carved above the door. Libraries were safe. Libraries held answers. Sarah made her way toward it as the last light faded, and the darkness, cold and complete, settled over Ashford like a shroud. Empty houses, the library door was unlocked. Of course it was. Everything in Ashford was unlocked. Doors hung open like invitations, or like warnings. Sarah stepped inside and locked the door behind her, knowing it probably wouldn't matter. If whatever haunted this place wanted in, a lock wouldn't stop them. But the click of the lock engaging gave her a small measure of comfort. An illusion of control. The library was dark and musty, that old book smell mixed with the ever-present decay that seemed to permeate every building in town. Sarah's flashlight revealed rows of shelves, a circulation desk, reading tables with chairs neatly pushed in, everything covered in dust, but preserved. Frozen. She moved through the main floor quickly, checking sightlines, exits, windows. The building had 2 stories, fiction and reference on the ground floor, local history and archives upstairs. 2 doors besides the main entrance, one leading to a staff area with a break room and bathrooms, one marked Basement Archives. Rebecca Chen's recording had been found in the basement. That's what Marcus had said. But Sarah wasn't ready to go down there, not yet. Not until she'd secured her position and gotten her bearings. She found the staff break room and set up her equipment on a small table. The room had no windows, which was good. She'd feel safer not being visible from the street. There was a sink, a microwave, a small refrigerator that, when she checked, was mercifully turned off and empty. Sarah pulled out her laptop and connected her camera, transferring the day's footage. While the files transferred, she made herself eat. A protein bar that tasted like cardboard and a bottle of water. Forced herself to drink the whole bottle. Dehydration could affect judgment, and she needed to stay sharp. As she ate, she realized how exhausted she was. The 9-hour drive, the fear, the constant adrenaline, it was catching up to her. She checked her watch. 9:47 p.m. She should try to sleep, but the thought of closing her eyes in this place made her skin crawl. First, she'd explore the library properly, get her bearings, maybe find something useful. The main floor yielded little of interest, popular fiction, self-help books, a few computers at workstations that she didn't bother trying to turn on. But then she found the local history section, tucked in a back corner near the stairs. Sarah pulled books at random, spreading them across a reading table. History of Ashford. Nebraska by Margaret Keller. Settlement and Growth. German Immigration to the Great Plains Churches of Rural Nebraska. She started reading, taking notes, looking for patterns. Ashford's history was typical of Midwestern farming towns. Founded in 1883 by German and Swedish immigrants looking for farmland. They built quickly. Houses, shops, a school, and most importantly, a church. St. Catherine's, though the book noted it had originally had a different name, Church of the Silent Vigil. Sarah's pen paused on that detail. When had the name changed? The book didn't say. The town thrived in the early 20th century. Population grew to over 3,000 by 1920. The church was rebuilt after a fire in 1934. Sarah noted that date, remembering it from her earlier research. The book was frustratingly vague about the fire itself, saying only that 12 members of the congregation perished in a tragic accident. 12 people. 12 chairs in the Undercroft. Was that significant? Sarah kept reading. The town struggled during the Depression but survived, prospered during World War II as agricultural demand increased, then slowly declined after the 1960s as mechanized farming required fewer workers and younger generations moved to cities. But there were gaps. References to events that weren't explained. In 1934, after the church fire, the town held a period of mourning. Services were led by Pastor Heinrich Müller until a new pastor could be found. During this time, several families relocated to other communities. How many families? Why? The book didn't say. In 1967, 23 residents participated in a special church gathering and subsequently relocated to continue their spiritual journey elsewhere. Relocated where? What kind of gathering? No details. In 1998, Dr. Robert Halloway and his family left Ashford to pursue opportunities in another state. Left? Or vanished? The phrasing was odd. Sarah photographed every page that mentioned these events. The pattern was clear. Something had been wrong with Ashford from the beginning. Every few decades, people disappeared. The town continued but diminished, wounded, until 2019, when it happened to everyone at once. She pulled out another book, this one older, Pre-Settlement History of Northeastern Nebraska. It included a section on Native American presence in the region. Sarah skimmed until she found a relevant passage. The Pawnee tribe, dominant in the region prior to European settlement, maintained clear territorial boundaries. However, certain areas were avoided entirely, considered wrong land where the spirits were restless. One such area, approximately 40 miles southeast of present-day Geneva, was described in tribal oral histories as the place where silence dwells. Pawnee guides warned early settlers to avoid this location, claiming the ground was hungry and the air thick with old things. These warnings were largely ignored. Sarah's blood ran cold. The place where silence dwells. That's where Ashford had been built. She found a map of the town from 1890. St. Catherine's Church was marked, but with its original name, Church of the Silent Vigil. The building sat at what appeared to be the exact center of town, as if everything else had been built around it. As if the church had been there first. Had it been there before the town? Before the settlers arrived? That didn't make sense, but a loud bang from somewhere above made Sarah jump, her heart leaping into her throat. She grabbed her flashlight and stood, barely breathing. Footsteps on the second floor, slow, deliberate. The floorboards creaking under weight. Something was up there. Sarah's hand found her pepper spray. She wanted to run, but there was only one exit and it meant crossing the main floor where she'd be visible from the stairs. She could hide, but the staff room had no lock. The basement. The footsteps moved toward the stairs. Sarah made a split-second decision. She grabbed her most important equipment, camera, phone, wallet, and moved quickly but quietly toward the basement door. Opened it as silently as she could, slipped through and eased it closed behind her. Darkness. Complete darkness. Sarah stood at the top of the basement stairs, barely breathing, listening. She could hear the footsteps above, moving across the main floor. Could hear something else too, that whisper sound, louder now. Coming from everywhere. A voice drifted down, female and flat and wrong. "I know you're here, Rachel Morrison." Sarah didn't know how she knew, but she knew. "You're reading about us, learning, that's good." The voice was closer now, near the basement door. "So you should understand before you decide." Sarah's hand trembled on the flashlight. "Don't turn it on. Don't make a sound. The others want to take you now, bring you to the church, make you one of us." A pause. "But I think you should choose. Everyone should choose. That's what Pastor Whitmore said. Everyone must choose willingly." The door handle rattled. Sarah backed down the stairs, one careful step at a time, praying they wouldn't creak. "You can hide," Rachel said, "but you can't leave. The fog won't let you. The silence has you now. You breathed it in. It's inside you, growing." The door opened. Sarah turned and fled down the stairs, abandoning stealth for speed. Behind her she heard Rachel descend, her footsteps unhurried. Patient. The basement was pitch black. Sarah risked her flashlight, sweeping the beam wildly. Filing cabinets, shelves of old newspapers, boxes of documents, and in the back corner, a desk with a computer that was somehow still running, its screen glowing in the darkness. Sarah ran for it, not sure what she was hoping to find. Behind her, Rachel's footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. The computer screen showed a document, half-written, "The Truth About Ashford" by Rebecca Chenniff. "You're reading this? I'm probably dead." Or worse. Sarah scrolled frantically, reading. It started in 1883. The founders didn't choose this location randomly. They chose it because of the silence. Because this is a thin place, where the walls between worlds grow weak. The Pawnee knew. They left warnings. "You found Rebecca's work," Rachel said from behind her. Sarah spun, pressing her back against the desk. Rachel stood 10 feet away, her black eyes reflecting the computer's glow. She was close to understanding, but not close enough. What happened to her? Sarah demanded. Rachel tilted her head. She joined us. Eventually, they all do. Where is she? Everywhere, nowhere in the silence. Rachel smiled. You'll understand soon. Come to the church. Pastor Whitmore wants to explain, wants to show you what we've become. I'm not going anywhere with you. Then you'll stay here forever, trapped alone. Rachel's smile widened. The fog won't let you leave. Time moves differently here now. You could try to run for days and never reach the edge of town. But you'll get hungry, tired, and we'll be waiting. Sarah's hand closed around the pepper spray in her pocket. You can't hurt us, Rachel said, as if reading her thoughts. We're not really here. Not anymore. We're echoes, memories, pieces of what we were left behind when we crossed over. Crossed over to where? To the silence. To the nothing. To... Rachel paused, searching for words. There's no language for it. But Pastor Whitmore can help you understand. Come to the church at midnight. Come to the front doors. They'll open for you. And if I don't, then you'll go mad alone in the dark. Rachel turned and walked back toward the stairs. Midnight, Sarah, your choice. She disappeared up the stairs, and Sarah was alone in the basement, alone with Rebecca Chen's unfinished document, alone with the growing certainty that she was never leaving Ashford. Alive. Sarah spent the next hour reading Rebecca Chen's notes. Every word, every observation, every horrible discovery, Rebecca had been thorough. She'd interviewed people in neighboring towns, or tried to. Most refused to talk about Ashford. Those who did speak mentioned strange fog, unexplained sounds, livestock that died when brought too close to the town limits. One older man had told Rebecca about his grandfather, who'd been one of Ashford's original settlers. The grandfather had left after 5 years, taking his family in the middle of the night. He'd said the town was cursed and that the church should never have been built. But when Rebecca tried to find records of this family, she found nothing. It was as if they'd been erased from history. Rebecca had found references to the silence in various religious and occult texts, not as metaphor but as an actual place or state of being that existed before creation. Before the word there was the silence. Before light there was nothing. And in that nothing something dwelled. She theorized that Ashford sat on a weak point between that primordial nothing and reality. A thin place where the walls were permeable, and the ritual, the blood, the willing participants, the communal belief had torn the wall down completely. The last entry in Rebecca's notes was dated November 3rd, 2019. At 9:34 p.m. I've been having dreams, or maybe they're not dreams. Maybe they're visions. I see the nothing, the silence. It's not empty like I thought. There are things there, consciousnesses, vast and ancient and patient. They've been waiting since before time began, waiting for a way through, waiting for us to open the door. Pastor Whitmore found them, or they found him. And together, they performed the ritual that would let the silence in. Can hear it now. Even awake, a humming beneath everything, like the universe holding its breath. Need to see. I need to know. I'm going to the church. That was the last entry. Sarah closed the notebook and sat in the darkness of the basement, thinking. Rebecca had gone to the church, and then she'd disappeared, or joined them, or something worse, and now they wanted Sarah to do the same. She checked her watch. 11:07 p.m., less than an hour until midnight. She should run, should get in her car and drive, fog or no fog, keep driving until she either escaped or ran out of gas. At least she'd have tried, but something told her running wouldn't work. Rachel had been clear. The fog wouldn't let her leave. Time moved differently here. She could drive for days and never reach the edge of town, which left her with a choice: hide in the basement and slowly go mad, or confront whatever waited at the church. At least then she'd have answers. At least then she'd know what she was dealing with. And maybe there was a way to close the door. If Rebecca had found a way to open it, there had to be a way to close it. Sarah packed her equipment, made sure her phone and camera were fully charged, drank some water and forced herself to eat another protein bar. She needed energy, needed to be sharp. At 11:45 p.m. she left the library. The night was impossibly cold. Sarah's breath came out in thick clouds. The fog had returned, thicker than before, pressing against her like something alive. She could barely see 10 feet in any direction, but she could see the church. Its spire rose above the fog, dark against the darker sky, and there was a light in one of the windows. A flickering orange light. Candles. They were waiting for her. Sarah walked through the empty streets, her flashlight cutting through the fog. The figures appeared as she approached the church, standing in doorways, at windows, lining the streets like spectators. The entire population of Ashford had come out to watch. Their eyes were holes of blackness that reflected no light. Sarah forced herself to keep walking. Don't run. Don't show fear. They feed on fear, she was sure of it. Rachel Morrison stepped out of the fog directly in front of her. You came, she said. Her voice carried genuine surprise. I wasn't sure you would. I want answers, Sarah said. Your pastor promised answers. He'll give them to you. But Sarah... Rachel reached out and Sarah flinched, but the touch was gentle. Rachel's hand was ice cold, but not hostile. When you understand, you'll have to choose. We all had to choose, and the choice isn't what you think it is. What does that mean? Rachel smiled. It was a terrible smile, not quite human anymore. You'll see. She stepped aside and the crowd parted, forming a corridor leading to the church. Sarah walked through it, surrounded by the empty-eyed residents of Ashford. Close enough to touch, close enough to grab her, but they didn't. They just watched, waiting. The church doors stood open. Candlelight flickered from within. The first warm light Sarah had seen in the church. Thousands of candles, their flames dancing in some breeze she couldn't feel. She climbed the stone steps and entered St. Catherine's. The transformation from her first visit was staggering. Every surface was covered in candles, thousands of them, casting dancing shadows across the walls. The pews were filled with the townspeople, sitting in perfect silence, their black eyes fixed forward on the altar. And behind the altar, in the pulpit, stood Pastor David Whitmore. He was a small man, mid-60s, balding, wearing the black suit and white collar of his profession. In any other context, he would have looked ordinary, kindly even, a grandfather figure, but his eyes were black as pitch, and when he smiled at Sarah, she saw something vast and hungry looking out from behind his face. Miss Mitchell, he said, his voice warm and welcoming. Thank you for coming. Please sit. We have much to discuss. Sarah stayed standing. I want answers. That's all. Then I'm leaving. Whitmore chuckled. Leaving? Yes, everyone wants to leave at first. But Sarah, may I call you Sarah? You can't leave. The fog won't allow it. The silence won't allow it. You're part of this now, whether you accept it or not. What did you do to these people? I freed them. Whitmore spread his arms, encompassing the silent congregation. I showed them the truth. The beautiful, terrible truth about what lies beyond the noise of existence. About what waited before the beginning and will remain after the end. You killed them, no. Whitmore's voice echoed through the church, and for a moment Sarah heard that layered quality. Multiple voices speaking as one. He composed himself. No, Sarah, that's what you don't understand. We didn't die. We transcended. We became part of something infinitely greater than our small, frightened lives. He descended from the pulpit, walking slowly down the aisle toward her. Sarah wanted to back away but forced herself to stand her ground. Do you know what silence really is? Whitmore asked. Not the absence of sound. The absence of existence itself. The void before creation. And in that void there are other presences. Consciousness is so vast and ancient that our minds can barely comprehend them. This is insane. Is it? Whitmore stopped a few feet away. You've felt it, haven't you? The weight of the silence. The sense of being watched by something impossibly patient. Something that's been here longer than humanity. Longer than life itself, he was right. Sarah had felt it. From the moment she entered the fog, she'd felt observed, assessed, waited for. Come, Whitmore said. Let me show you. Let me help you understand. He led her to the Undercroft door. The congregation rose as one, following. Sarah descended the spiral stairs, surrounded by the empty-eyed townspeople, into the darkness below. But it wasn't dark. Candles burned everywhere here, too, arranged in those same circles and patterns. The 12 chairs sat in their circle. And in the center the air was wrong. Sarah stared, trying to understand what she was seeing. The air was distorted, warped, like heat shimmer but cold. And in that distortion there were shapes, suggestions of forms, things without faces or bodies or any definable structure, but there nonetheless. They existed and didn't exist, were there and not there, and looking at them hurt, not physically but spiritually, mentally. They were wrong in a way that defied description, and yet there was something almost beautiful about them, something seductive. They offered silence, peace, an end to struggle, do you see? Whitmore whispered. Do you understand now? Sarah couldn't look away. The shapes moved, if moved was the right word. They existed in the spaces between moments, in the silence between heartbeats. They've been here all along, Whitmore continued. In the nothing, in the silence before creation. And they've been trying to come through, trying to return to a universe that forgot them. We gave them a door. Why? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Because they offered us a choice. Join them in the silence. Become part of something eternal. No more pain, no more fear, no more death, because we would no longer be truly alive. We would be other, greater. Sarah tore her eyes away from the shapes, looked at Whitmore, at his black eyes, at the thing wearing his face. You're not human anymore. No, he agreed. We're not. We're echoes, pieces, the parts of us that remained when the rest crossed into the silence. But we're not suffering, Sarah. We're waiting, and soon you'll wait with us. I'll never join you. You already have. Whitmore's smile widened. You breathe the fog. You walk these streets. The silence is inside you now, growing. Can't you feel it? And God help her, she could. A cold presence in her chest spreading, whispering, calling her to let go, to stop fighting, to accept the silence. No, Sarah said. But her voice lacked conviction. Come, Whitmore said. Let me tell you the full story. Let me help you understand what you're becoming. Sarah spent the rest of that night, if night it was. Time had lost all meaning, learning the truth about Ashford from Pastor Whitmore. They sat in the undercroft, surrounded by candles and the silent congregation and the shapes in the distortion. Whitmore spoke in a calm, almost professorial tone, as if he were teaching a college seminar rather than describing the end of the world. He told her about his research. How he'd been a professor of religious studies, specializing in what he called threshold spirituality, the liminal spaces between belief systems, between the sacred and profane. He'd been fascinated by the idea of thin places, locations where the barrier between the physical and spiritual worlds grew permeable. That's what brought him to Ashford. The town's history of disappearances, the Pawnee Warnings, the original name of the Church of the Silent Vigil. I thought I was studying folklore, Whitmore said. Local legends. But the more I dug, the more I found. Real patterns. Real evidence. This place is special, Sarah. The land itself is different. He'd found texts in the church archives, old documents, handwritten in languages he had to have translated, German, Latin, something older that he never identified. They spoke of Die Stille, the silence, of Das Nichts, the nothing, of entities that existed before God spoke the word and brought forth creation. Genesis tells us that in the beginning there was darkness, Whitmore said. But it doesn't say the darkness was empty. It doesn't say nothing was there. Because before God said, "Let there be light," there was the silence. And in that silence they waited. The entities, the dwellers, Whitmore called them, existed in the nothing. They weren't evil exactly. They simply were. Had been, would be. They predated good and evil, predated moral concepts entirely. But they wanted in, wanted to return to a universe that had forgotten them. The ritual was specific, Whitmore continued. 12 willing participants, the blood of the innocent, the entire community as witness. And it had to be done at a thin place, where the walls were already weak. He'd spent 5 years preparing, slowly converting his congregation, teaching them about the silence, about the nothing, about transcendence. Most had been willinger. Some had resisted, like Marcus Johnson, Sarah said, remembering the letter she'd found in the library. Whitmore's expression flickered. Marcus was conflicted. He loved his family too much, couldn't see beyond their temporary suffering to the eternal peace we were offering them. You murdered his children. We freed them first, Whitmore said. There was no remorse in his voice. The ritual required innocent blood, children who had never sinned, never chosen darkness. Their sacrifice opened the door. And then we followed, all of us. We stepped through into the silence, but you came back. No, Whitmore shook his head. We never left. That's what you're not understanding. We're not ghosts. We're not spirits. We're fragments. When we crossed into the silence, most of us went all the way. But pieces remained, echoes, imprints on reality. The dwellers can't exist fully in your world of noise and light, but they can reach through, leave parts of themselves behind. That's what we are now. Their hands, their eyes, their voice. Sarah felt sick. And the fog? Is them. The cold is them. The distortion of time is them. This town exists partially in your world and partially in the silence now. And the more people who come here, who breathe the fog, who stay, the more the silence spreads, like an infection, like an invitation. Whitmore stood. You're changing already, Sarah. I can see it in you, the darkness in your eyes, the way you can sense them now, the dwellers. Soon you won't need me to explain. You'll know. You'll understand. Sarah wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. The whispers in her head were louder, the shapes in the distortion more defined. And when she looked down at her hands, she thought she saw something moving beneath her skin, something dark and formless. She fled, pushed through the crowd of empty-eyed townspeople, and ran up the stairs, through the church, out into the fog-choked night. But running didn't help. The fog was everywhere, and no matter which direction she went, she ended up back at the church. The town was a labyrinth now. Streets twisted back on themselves. Houses appeared and disappeared. Time stretched and compressed. Sarah ran until she collapsed, sobbing, on the steps of a building she didn't recognize. When she looked up, she saw it was a school. Ashford Elementary. The doors hung open. Inside it was dark and cold. Sarah's flashlight revealed classrooms frozen in time. Desks in neat rows, chalkboards with lessons still written on them, children's artwork on the walls. In one classroom she found a calendar, November 2019, and written in a child's handwriting on November 3rd, Church Day. Everyone gets to see. Sarah sank into a desk chair, too exhausted to run anymore. The infection was spreading. She could feel it now. A cold presence in her chest, her lungs, her blood. With every breath, the silence grew stronger. How long before she became like them? Like Rachel and Whitmore and all the others? How long before she was just an echo, a fragment, a piece of something vast and inhuman? She pulled out her phone. Still no signal. But she opened the voice recorder and started talking. If anyone finds this, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a journalist. I came to Ashford, Nebraska, to investigate a mass disappearance. What I found is worse than I imagined. She talked for an hour, recording everything. The fog, the dwellers, the infection, Whitmore's story. She uploaded the recording to her phone's memory, to her laptop, to every device she had. Evidence, proof. If she didn't make it out, maybe someone else would find it. Maybe someone else could finish what she'd started. When she was done, Sarah sat in the darkness of the elementary school and waited for dawn. But dawn never came. Time stopped meaning anything. Sarah's watch said she'd been in the school for 3 hours, but it felt like 3 days, or 3 minutes. The darkness never lifted. The cold never eased. Finally, she forced herself to move. Staying still meant giving up, meant accepting the infection. She had to keep going, had to find a way out. She left the school and made her way back to the fire station, where she'd originally planned to set up camp. It felt like years ago now, like a different life. The fire station was exactly as she remembered. 2 stories, brick, defensible. She established herself in the second-floor bunk room and forced herself to think. To plan. If what Whitmore said was true, if the door between this world and the silence was open, then there had to be a way to close it. Doors worked both ways, and Rebecca had been looking for something. Something about a fail-safe. Sarah pulled out Rebecca's notes again, reading more carefully. There. A passage she'd skimmed before. The ritual requires 12 willing participants and the blood of the innocent. But there's a fail-safe built into the structure. The original texts mention it. If the door is opened against the natural order, if innocent blood is spilled without true consent, the door can be closed. But only by someone who bears the mark of the innocent. Someone who witnessed the tragedy but was not complicit. Someone who carries the weight of survivor's guilt. Sarah's hands trembled. Was that her? She hadn't witnessed the original ritual, but she'd witnessed its aftermath. She'd seen what they'd become, but more importantly, Rebecca had witnessed it, had been here on November 3rd, 2019, had seen them perform the ritual. And then she'd... What Joined them or been consumed? Sarah kept reading. The door exists in the place where the first blood was spilled. To close it, the marked one must stand in that place and speak the word of creation. Not the word of God, but the word that came before God. The word that pierced the silence at the beginning, the Undercroft. The circle where the 12 children had died. That's where she'd have to go. But what was the word of creation? How could there be a word before God spoke? Sarah thought about cosmology, about the Big Bang Theory, about how the universe began with a single point of infinite density and heat, and then expanded. And when it expanded, it created sound. The cosmic background radiation discovered by Penzias and Wilson was essentially the echo of that first moment. The universe ringing like a bell, was that it? The first sound? The sound that shattered the primordial silence and created everything? But how could she reproduce it? She wasn't a physicist, wasn't a mystic. She was just a journalist who'd wandered into something far beyond her understanding, unless it wasn't about reproducing the exact sound. Maybe it was about the intent, the meaning, the act of creation itself, of making sound where there was silence, of bringing light where there was darkness, of refusing the nothing. Sarah spent the rest of the day, if it was day. The darkness never changed, preparing. She reviewed all her footage, compiled her notes, created a timeline of everything that had happened. She also searched the fire station thoroughly and found something useful: emergency flares. 4 of them, old but still good. Light, heat, sound, everything the dwellers hated. She also found a battery-powered radio. It didn't work, no stations broadcasting, but she could modify it. Create feedback. Create noise. As she worked, the whispers in her head grew louder. The infection spreading. She could feel it in her thoughts now. Her intrusive ideas that weren't hers. Suggestions to stop fighting, to accept, to join. She pushed them back, focused on the work. Finally, as her watch claimed it was November 1st, impossible, she'd only been here 3 days, Sarah made her decision. She would go to the church, confront them. And she would try to close the door. She would probably fail, probably die or worse, but she had to try. Sarah walked through the fog-choked streets at what her watch insisted was midnight. The town was alive now in a way it hadn't been before. Figures moved in the shadows. Doors opened and closed. Whispers followed her. The infection had progressed. She could see them clearly now, the dwellers. Their forms shifting in and out of reality. Beautiful and terrible, offering peace, offering silence. Sarah gripped her makeshift weapons, the flares, the modified radio, and kept walking. The church loomed ahead. Pastor Whitmore stood at the doors waiting. "You've come to join us," he said. "It wasn't a question. I've come to end this," Sarah replied. Whitmore smiled sadly. "There is no ending, only transition. But if you wish to try, I won't stop you. The dwellers are curious to see what you'll do." He stepped aside. Sarah entered the church and descended into the Undercroft for what she knew would be the last time. The townspeople followed, filling the chamber. The shapes in the distortion were clearer than ever. Almost solid, almost real, Sarah stepped into the circle, the place where innocent blood had been spilled, the place where the door had been opened. "I stand in the place of spilling," she said, the words coming from somewhere deep inside her. "I bear the mark of the innocent. I witnessed the aftermath of what was done here. And I refuse it." "This is pointless," Whitmore said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. Sarah pulled out the modified radio, turned it on. The feedback was immediate, a high-pitched squeal that cut through the silence like a knife. The dwellers recoiled. She lit a flare. Bright orange light flooded the Undercroft, and the shape screamed a sound that wasn't a sound but a feeling. Hurt hearing. "The door is open," Whitmore shouted. "Nothing can close it." "Watch me," Sarah said. She thought about Rebecca Chen, about Marcus Johnson and his daughters, about the nearly 2,000 people who died in this place, about all the victims across all the years, and she screamed, not words, not language, just pure sound, the opposite of silence, the refusal of nothing. Light exploded from her. Not physical light, but something else. Something that existed on the same level as the dwellers. The door, she could see it now, a tear in reality, began to close. The dwellers fought back. She felt them pressing against her mind, trying to silence her, trying to pull her into the nothing. But Sarah had spent 3 days breathing their fog, 3 days carrying their infection, and now she used it. Used the connection they'd forced on her to push back, to shove them away. The door closed, the shapes vanished like an infection. The distortion disappeared and Sarah collapsed. When Sarah woke, the fog was gone. She lay on the floor of the Undercroft, weak and shaking. The candles had gone out. The air was clear and cold, normal cold, not that unnatural freeze. She pulled herself upright and looked around. The townspeople were gone. Not dead gone, erased, like they'd never existed. The chairs were empty, the walls bare. Even the names carved in the stone had vanished. Sarah stumbled up the stairs and out of the church. Dawn was breaking, real dawn, pink and gold. The fog had lifted entirely. Ashford looked like a normal abandoned town, sad and empty but not haunted. She walked to the edge of town, her heart pounding. Would the barrier stop her? Would she still be trapped? She reached the town limits and kept walking. Into the cornfields, toward the highway. But with each step something pulled at her, a tether, a connection. And when she tried to go further, when she tried to actually leave, she couldn't. It was like walking into an invisible wall. Sarah stood at the edge of Ashford. Staring at the highway she could see but couldn't reach, and understood. The door was closed, but closing it had required a price. Someone had to stay. Someone had to maintain the seal. Someone had to be the lock. And that someone was her. She tried again and again over the next days, tried to leave, tried to escape. But the barrier wouldn't let her. She was bound to Ashford now, forever keeper of the door. Guardian of the seal. Prison, I don't know if anyone will find this. Don't know if anyone should. But I have to record what happened. For the record, for the truth, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a journalist. I came to Ashford, Nebraska, 6 years ago to write a story about a disappeared town. Found something worse. The door is closed. I closed it. Used the word of creation, the first sound, and drove back the dwellers in silence. The door shut. The tear in reality healed, but the townspeople didn't come back. When the light faded, they were gone. Not dead gone, erased, like they'd never existed. The houses are still here, the cars, the photos, but the echoes, the pieces, the things wearing the faces of Ashford's residents, they vanished with the dwellers. I thought that meant I'd won. Thought I could leave. I was wrong. The fog is gone. The cold is gone. The whispers have stopped. Ashford is just an empty town now, abandoned, forgotten. No longer haunted, but can't leave. I've tried. God, I've tried. I walk to the edge of town and I can see the highway. I can see the normal world. But I can't cross over. There's a wall, invisible but absolute. I'm trapped here, in this dead town, alone. I think I understand now. The door is closed, but closing it required a price. The marked one. Standing in the place of spilling, speaking the word of creation that created a seal. A permanent seal. And I'm part of it now, bound to this place. Keeping the door closed through my presence. I'm the lock, and I can never leave. Have supplies? The town is full of canned food and bottled water. Won't starve. Won't die. But I'll be here forever. A guardian who never wanted the job. A prisoner in a town that shouldn't exist. Sometimes wonder if I made the right choice. If maybe accepting the silence would have been better. But then I remember what they were. What they wanted. To spread. To consume. To turn reality into nothing. Stopped that. Whatever the cost. So if you're listening, don't come looking for me. Don't try to help. The door is closed. The dwellers are gone. And I'm keeping them gone. Tell Marcus I found the story. Tell my family I love them. Some stories aren't meant to be told. This is Sarah Mitchell, November 3rd, 2025. Ashford, Nebraska. Postscript from the desk of Marcus Brennan. Editor, Heartland Voices, December 15th, 2025. This manuscript was found in my mailbox this morning. No postmark. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a USB drive containing all of Sarah's recordings and this narrative. Also included was a letter. Marcus found your reporter. She's alive, sort of. But she can't leave. I tried to help. Trust me, I tried. She wanted you to have this. Wanted the story told. But she also wanted you to understand. Don't send anyone else. The door is closed. Some doors should stay closed. I don't know how long she can hold on. But she's determined. She's keeping the world safe. Rebecca Chen, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know if I believe it. But I knew Sarah. This is her voice, her words. And if it's true, then Sarah Mitchell is a hero. Trapped in eternal exile, but a hero. I'm publishing this anonymously online. Let it circulate as fiction. But for those who know, this is a warning. There are thin places in the world, places where something ancient presses against reality. And sometimes brave people stand in those places and hold the line. Sarah Mitchell is one of those people. This is her story. God help us all. The end.